Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's session of Tambarara. Of course, I'm Tinashe, and I'm joined by my usual colleagues. Cornelius, how are you doing today?
Very good, happy to be here.
Nice, and obviously happy as well.
Antinashe, hi Cornelius.
Right. Let's jump straight into it. Of course, just coming into 2022, the first thing on everyone's mind is exchange rates. What are your guys' thoughts on that kind of front, and where do you guys see it going?
Yeah, well, we've been debating in-house what we think the year-end exchange rate will be for the year, and we're hearing estimates of 450, which I think is too high. I feel like we'll probably see levels around 300 to 350 by end of year, given that the RBZ has really set out its goal to stabilize inflation, which we have seen over the past 4 or 5 months.
Alright, so you really quite have enough belief in RBZ and the national budget and their sort of forefront in terms of actually controlling interest rates.
Not the national budget, but I do have belief that inflation won't reach triple-digit figures like we saw in 2019 and 2020.
No, good point, good point. Happy, any thoughts on that end?
I would go with 400. I think that's the focus that would make a lot of sense if you follow the pattern over the years that we've always doubled on the power market rate. Last year it started at 105, 110, and then we ended the year at 220. We're on 230 now. Some codes are at 240. Um, so it now goes beyond what RBZ measures are being proposed. I mean, they've maintained their hawkish policy stance. They've maintained reserve money is still up. Bird money is also still growing, far higher than what would be the regional normals. So I think it will double. Also, factor in speculative behavior and also factor in that's actually a career for most people. It's a job. Um, so I would go with 400 by year end. They might maintain that. But I think what's worrying for most is the exchange rate gap, that the premium between the official exchange rate and and the parallel market rate. So it can end where it wants, even if it gets to 600, so long as the official exchange rate and that gap is actually quite small and narrowed. So it can go to any, we can even end the year on 1,000, but that gap is not healthy. And so far there are no solutions on how they can actually narrow that gap. It's at what now? 85%. Our hard boiled egg index is on 300 now. So that means it's like a 120, 130% gap. Normal countries, or okay, not normal countries, countries that face exchange rate challenges like Nigeria have much smaller gaps of 12, 15%. And they're managing very well because they've got much smaller gaps. Angola has got 9%. Normal economies like South Africa have got only 2%, 3% gaps. We are like at 100%, which is not healthy for any economy.
Yeah, no, that's actually a great thing you pointed out. I feel like not so much where the actual exchange rate would be, like its actual absolute level, but more the gap between what the officials are saying is the actual auction rates and what's the actual rate on the streets. And I mean, just in that same sort of vibe, again, when you look at exchange rates, obviously you then have a forecast for what the economy is going to look like. So, in terms of your economic outlook, what sort of ideas do you think you have going into 2022?
So I think we can do it sector by sector.
Right.
I'll talk briefly about the financial services sector. So then again, it's also driven by interest rates and inflation, and I still believe inflation will be more stable than it has been in recent years. So that's always good for banks because it gives them more incentive to loan. It's good for insurance companies because premiums become more attractive. So I do see growth in the financial services sector purely because of those macroeconomic variables. But we do see that there's still a bit of hesitance in terms of loans because banks just don't know what the direction of the economy. Businesses are subjected to numerous issues such as costs associated with imports. But I do feel like businesses have now adapted in a sense. They're now stockpiling instead of importing incrementally. So they'd rather import it in bulk so that they can sort of minimize those inflationary pressures. So I do think the financial services sector will look stronger this year, which is why the Morgan and Co. multi-sector ETF is surrounded mainly on the dynamic and theme of financial services. So yeah, keep looking at our asset, please. All of it.
No, you
That's
did.
just sneaking.
You actually preempt. You actually preempted. I was actually going to ask you about the ETF as well, especially talking about financial services. So great that our ETF currently holds financial services sectors. And then happy in terms of your views on economic outlook, any specific sectors you want to talk about?
Um, well, no one has ever got it right. A few people get the economic outlooks right, especially on sector performances, especially in real terms. I try not to do that. Try to be more realistic. Agriculture, according to finance minister, they said that it's going to anchor the growth. But we've seen time and time again that growth in agriculture is not even. So you get pockets of growth in maize, of which is not even a cash crop, so it doesn't really matter. It's just there to feed our people. But that's only like 200 million of the input bill, so it's not very important that you can think that it's going to sustain your economy. Tobacco, yes, we expect better numbers. Not really better numbers, but at least they'll get past the 200 million kg mark. Other cash crops, they're still coming up. We still haven't got it right with our fruits. We still haven't got it right with our vegetables. We still need to import carrots. We still need to import potatoes. So growth in agriculture is uneven. We'll have pockets of growth, and therefore, I'm not very buoyant about agriculture. Mining is the same story as well. There's still a lot of processes that need to be done. We haven't amended the Minerals Act. We're still using a Rhodesian Act, which is unfavorable to most, especially small scale miners. So I don't know if Kara Resources comes on board, which is highly unlikely. Borealis probably doesn't have that kind of money. But if he finds a buyer for Caro, then maybe mining will do well. But not with the three platinum mines. They're still investing in expansion and investing in new mines. I'm not expecting a lot. Gold, already we started hearing the noise around gold buyers that want to be sanctioned. So there's going to be problems there. It's not going to be as lucrative as last year or the year before. So yeah, those two, I'm not very.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And also the whole idea of like mining as well. I feel like mining especially is exposed to like sort of like global patterns in terms of like mineral prices and that kind of thing. And if you look like the Economist and National the MF, the Monetary Fund, has also projected that gold prices are going to stabilize and not rise quite the way they did during the whole COVID time. So yeah, there's a lot of speculation held in terms of minerals and just mining going forward as well. And then also you have to consider Zim heading towards election season. Um, how do you guys think that's going to affect things going forward? Does that change your economic outlook at all? Or yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I just personally hope that that we don't have a situation of violence, because violence will destabilize everything. It will filter into tourism, and tourism income usually drops sharply before elections and after elections due to those fears of violence. So I just hope that we don't have a situation that may occur then. It looks sort of ripe for a situation of that to occur because of the three. There's MDC, which is divided into two, Monzora, and now Chamisa was starting his own thing. And of course, you have ZANU PF as well. So I just hope those conflicts are managed within MDC and amongst the ZANU team as well. Yep.
He's not starting his own thing. He's rebranding.
Rebrand starting.
So election season, I think for the economy, every time we've gone through an election season, the economy kind of takes a back seat, everything becomes political. We're drifting more and more into that zone now. As you can see, more political headlines are coming to dominate. If it's an economic story, it's about the roads that we've done or the infrastructure drive that the president has done, the Second Republic has done. So unfortunately, this is what happens all the time. The economy takes a backseat. They ignore a lot of other things in the name of politics that most policies are ignored. They don't make the right decisions. They make the decisions based on if the outcome of the elections is beneficial for them. So if it's not going to be beneficial to ZANU-PF or Okay, that's the government that we know and we've known for like. If it's not beneficial to the ruling party, they're not going to make that policy. So policy takes a backseat always in an election season. So that's where the problem is. We might see an increase in subsidies. I know a lot of people now are saying fertilizer is expensive. There's going to be subsidies introduced somehow to lower that cost for the farmers. And as we go, so that would take the whole budget out. Economic policy by the RBZ is also challenged during an election season. And you might also see that during an election season, companies like Econet have to renew their licenses to be able to fund that election. There's going to be noise around that as well. Investment deals, some of them bogus, but you'll see that there will be a lot of announcements on that as well. I mean, we've been through this, it's a cycle, slightly different this time. The party situation, we know that there's only two parties in here. The others, well, they're beneficiaries of whatever the state is trying to do, whatever the government is trying to do. So parties, there'll always be that MDC in another name called Chamisa or whatever he wants to call it today, Citizens CAC, but it still has a red color. So it's still the same thing. So it's, we'll see. Economics takes a backseat, usually. So there's not, even with your outlook, all you people are just going to get it wrong because you do not factor in the politics and the impact that it will have. If it's violent, like you said, it is, then investors kind of take a back seat. Well, the stock market will run because that's the only safe outcome.
Right.
But everything else just kind of just lays low. Tourism, not so much because all those human rights activists will be coming to see the situation. Yeah, so then you might get a lot of conferencing, a lot of city hotels will actually boom, not so much the resorts. But even then, when we speak of that, I think we're going to talk about the COVID regulations.
Yeah, definitely.
Because the world over is moving away from COVID. They've let, it's going to be there. It's with us. You gave us COVID here on the show. But it's going to be, it's going to be there. I mean, you're going to learn to live with it. And the world has realized that. Britain has already removed face masks. America is also doing the same. Everywhere else, they're actually just saying, you know what, this is the new way and the new normal. But in here, you find that we're still making funny regulations. The one that was announced on Friday was room service, no dining experience. Imagine how chaotic that is for hoteliers.
The 10-day quarantine.
And then the 10-day quarantine rule. But we're doing this in the name of politics, and we call it science, but maybe political science would be the best. But these are things that will then affect us going forward. They also then trying to say, you don't campaign because it's in COVID, you can't hold a rally if you're a certain opposition party, but they are allowed to hold rallies and, you know. So COVID also is going to be the biggest factor that will weigh on this election season, your economic outlook. What are the regulations that we have to adopt? We've got to move on as a country. Our numbers are low, they've always been low. We've got only 5,000 deaths. Yes, we need to protect lives, but 5,000 deaths against a country that has gone to 20,000 malaria deaths is hardly anything to be scared of. We die of more things, of AIDS even, of cancer than COVID. So we need to move away from that, but that's the biggest factor that's going to affect the economic outlook this year.
Yeah, no, definitely. I feel like there's a lot of like country-specific risks that us as Zimbabwe kind of face. You know, again, like you mentioned, there's a lot of volatility and uncertainty in terms of trying to estimate like our outlook. And again, like you said, no one ever gets it right. So.
Yeah.
But again, I feel like you then look at other countries, like especially African countries, we were like, oh, our tourism sector isn't doing quite well. But then Kenya's numbers boosted into like their tourism. It's like, why can't we do the same? There's as affected by COVID the same way we are, but
and also they're less expensive. I mean, we are expensive. Hotels in Big Falls is 180, 120. That's like very expensive. And then there's no activity. What do? You have to sing the falls. I mean, we haven't really improved our tourism product. We're making noise about our natural resources, but we're not doing anything to even put a nice club in Big Falls. I don't really-
Yeah.
Where you can just, there's nothing. There's no shopping. We don't even have big names. You can't attract big names. So we're still a long way off in improving that product. People will come as part of packages, but then right now the borders are closed with South Africa. The borders are closed, so you really can't take those road trips to just say Big Falls, you're there, and then you go back to South Africa. I mean, if you go to the Gonarajo Park, you go to Kruger National Park, and then you cross over, you go to Matopos, you then go to Big Falls. So there's still a lot of things that we need to fix.
Yeah, no, I
We
think
haven't fixed.
one of the things I feel like we do need to fix going forward as a country is sort of like getting people like tourists to actually be here for Zimbabwe. Because if you realize, a lot of people that go to Big Falls actually take a trip to South Africa, spend a couple of days, then take a flight to Big Falls,
Yeah,
go
so
back to South
day trip.
Africa.
We need to
And
send
we,
it as a
and we
package.
still count those as like incoming visits and kind of inflates our numbers, and it's not quite a true value of like what's actually happening in the economy and everything. So yeah, there's actually a lot
And
we
now
need to
because you
fix.
can't even have a dining experience, which means you can't go to Boma, to go to restaurants, you got to order room service.
Yeah, no, fair enough. So again, going to 2022, tourism and that kind of sector is something we really need to focus on. Are there any other sectors you want to talk about?
Construction. I think construction,
Right.
we expect a major boom this year. 18% forecasted growth in the construction sector. But then again, this is also driven by financing. A lot of the government projects will be based in construction, especially pre-election. How many of them will be finished before after elections, that remains to be seen. But I would like to see a lot of financing from the financial services sector, particularly banks, focusing on construction. But a lot of the credit exposure is towards the agricultural sector. So I don't know if they're going to shift into more construction, property, real estate, or they're just going to bank on agriculture. But since the rains also came in late, we do have fears that our expected growth in the agricultural sector won't be as great as last year. Well, it definitely won't be. So banks may actually have to shift their loan books towards construction.
Oh yeah. So what you're saying is that the two sectors are sort of interlinked. Where for like when you take like CZ, it's got a massive agribusiness where a lot of its loans is generated from like the agriculture business. So fair enough. You did mention construction. Do you have any specific counters you'd say you'd recommend that you think are going to grow in the next couple of years, or just your own personal opinion?
I would say because Lafarge, cement, construction go hand in hand.
Right.
We did have a cement shortage last year. They tend to benefit because of the price uplift, but they do face dangers because of imports from South Africa.
Right.
But I do feel like if construction does go well as it's expected to, I think Lafarge is one of the
Poorly run company. It's
Is
got
it?
a bad plant. Even if we've had a construction boom, Lafarge has never done very well.
No, but they're recommissioning the new plant. That was just an accident.
No,
was one
over the
of-
years.
Yeah.
It's a very inefficient producer. Over the years, it is, I think since even Shoniwa's days, it has never really performed very well. Unless, of course, during the year we have a change in shareholding. Yes, then it will do well.
I mean, you say that as if you know something.
No. I disagree with that. They are the largest dry motors producer in the country. 1, 2, they have a new product called Water Shield, which is the first ever waterproof cement product.
Doesn't really
released.
matter. You can have new products so
Yeah.
long as you're an inefficient producer
Yeah.
and your costs are very high. Your profitability will always be compromised. So it doesn't really matter what, even if they come up with this fancy ceiling cement or something.
But I mean, surely it's just a trade. Like, you reduce profitability, but then you increase your volumes, and surely it keeps the it keeps the
And
lights
then
on.
what? Okay, they introduced dry water last year. What were their performance like?
The
Or
vol-
2 years ago.
The volume.
Volumes are good, yes, but what was the
Yeah.
profitability? At the end of the day, it's about profitability. You can have volumes,
Mm.
but then if your profitability is compromised in one way or the other, then that means there's something wrong with your whole
That's
process.
what I'm saying.
Are you not supposed to look at the whole company?
The margins were actually strong last year because of the cement shortage. So they were able to increase prices on finished products.
I don't think so.
They were.
It's a very inefficient producer. That's all it's been.
Yeah.
PPC is an efficient producer, but they're also struggling. They need capital, and the same with Lafarge. They need capital. Unfortunately, the Lafarge holding, it's kind of like selling out. They've already sold Zambia. They've already sold Malawi. So you would know that after that, it's the next Fed country's deal. So unless, like I say, there's a new shareholder, new majority shareholder, who's able to actually pump in money to then create efficiencies within the production line, then Lafarge will pick up, and then you can put it on your recommendations.
Evidence hold. We recommend it as a hold, right? But I do see uplift.
You have as a whole. Anyways, yeah, that actually is a very important thing in terms of just like efficiencies and how companies actually run in Zoom. Then again, you have to look at the last 2 years and think these were special cases, especially because of COVID. And now, again, going forwards, again, a lot of uncertainty. And like you said before, no one gets it right. Yeah, if that's you guys' outlook on certain sectors, any more to add?
Then nothing more. The informal sector, nobody ever talks about that. You know, that's like 70% of your economy or 60%. Whoever's got the correct stats, but 60%, 70%, there has to be a plan for the informal sector.
I mean, it's hard to have an outlook for that because it's hard to kind of like keep track of it and that sort of situation. That's why no one really talks about it because it's hard to predict.
Yeah, but that's your most determinant factor in terms of prices, your exchange rate, in terms of everything. So if you check your GDP numbers, wholesale and retail trade, we're the biggest contributors. That's what informal, that's largely the informal sector, and that should reflect then in your what's going to happen to trading, what's going to happen to the informal sector. That should reflect what are the government plans. That is when you should then go and talk to government, to what's her name, Stembi Sonyoni, and then say, you know, what are your plans to bring these into the formal sector? Because as long as that's still determining your exchange rate, then there's nothing that you can do. Inflation is just going to go up. 60% is still high. You said it's stable, but it's not. It's it's still high. So informal sector, we need to know what the government plan is. We need to know what the RBZ plan is. So if you're saying Nostra accounts are like 60% of your money supply now, then that means that's money that's coming from the informal sector, because the formal sector we don't earn in US dollars. But the informal sector, there's just like a cash basis on everything, US dollar cash basis. So we need a plan on that. Yeah, that's my sector to do.
Yeah, no, fair enough.
How do we bring them to the forefront?
So you've got ZSE. Why are they not creating that SME exchange? We've got the GEM portal already, but they've been marketed it well to be able to at least get the guys who do chemicals that they can easily list. The guys who do, they do tires now. There are a lot of tire companies now. I mean, they can easily raise money and list. But that's also just formalizing them. So you guys, you need to approach these guys. Get ZSE to work on something or push them to the GEM portal. There are a lot of ways that the capital markets can then help to bring them into the formal sector. But we're just not looking at it. But that's where the money is. If you listen to Eddie Cross, they say 6 billion maybe could be in the informal sector. All those gold dealers, where do they put their money?
Right. But I mean, just on that note, really, I know we've seen a lot of activity on the VFX, new companies listing. Just say in 2022, do you actually see the sort of like ZSE growing in terms of more companies actually listing? As much as a good idea and it makes sense, is it something that's actually practical and that's actually going to happen though?
Well, we'll see a lot of products from you guys, stockbrokers and asset managers. I think we'll see more REITs, more ETFs. There will be an avalanche of
once you get one,
and then everyone just wants to get in, and then they see we'll get a lot of them. In terms of new companies, that's why I say the ZSE needs to grow, and then to start thinking of small businesses. The companies like Better Bricks, they're right for listings. The SMEs that are at least bigger now, Skylake boreholes.
Londoners as well.
Londoners,
So they companies that ZSC needs to do its marketing, right? ZSC, FinSec, even VFX, EVA. So it's up to you, the brokers, up to, I think, all capital market players to be able to go out there and then sell the investment case. That way you also help government in formalizing these businesses.
Right.
Because the longer that they maintain the informal sector as the largest sector in the economy, we will continuously have problems with our economy. It's not going to be exchange rate stability, there's not going to be inflation stability. It's just going to be cycles. We'll have cycles of growth and then cycles will slip back again. It's like a drug addict. You recover and then... Yeah.
But yeah, we do. I think VFX, we're going to see a few more mining companies from Kuvimba. They want to continuously maintain coverage. What do you think of that happening?
Well, let them list, right? Let them list. We still don't understand the Kuvimba mining structure anyway. They did say they will list the province winners, they'll list gold, they've already listed nickel. And it's yet to trade. Has it traded? No, not yet.
Not yet. Not yet. One day traded, maybe I think about 30 shares traded, but it maintained the same price.
So there is... VFX needs a big company. It doesn't need Kuvimba, a company that's shrouded in, and that's going to be sanctioned at some point sooner or later anyway. It needs a big company. If they can get Zimplats, then that would be very good. They really need a big company so that, you know, the momentum can then be maintained and then people can then start investing.
Yeah, and I think right now the thing with the VFX, obviously it's limited to like mining companies because obviously that's where the main incentives are. So again, VFX is limited in that sense, but again, as it grows, we'll probably see exponential growth going to that exchange, and again, we'll just see how the year goes. If you guys have nothing else to add, I think that brings us to the end of this week's show. Thank you guys for joining us. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, comment, and we'll see you guys next week.